We have a lot of news to get to today, including a legal battle over buyouts for much of the federal workforce, the fate of the federal government's aid agency, the single largest donor of humanitarian aid in the world. It is right now up in the air. But we begin today with an urgent warning for every American from someone deep inside the country's top law enforcement agency, an agency already functionally decapitated, as friend of this program, Frank Figliuzzi, puts it, by the Trump administration and facing threats from now pardoned January 6 defendants. Our colleague Ken Dilanian reports that a message has been circulating in FBI circles from an FBI agent. It is believed to reflect the feelings of many inside that organization. We'll read that message to you. Quote, I offer this vignette free of political bias or moral judgment. It is not about any one person, but an amalgamation of multiple FBI special agents. I am the coach of your child's soccer team. I sit next to you on occasion in religious devotion. I'm a member of the PTA. With friends, you celebrated my birthday. I collected your mail and took out your trash while you were away from home. I played a round of golf with you. I'm a veteran. This is the quiet side of me that you do not know. I orchestrated a clandestine operation to secure the release of an allied soldier held captive by the Taliban. I prevented an ISIS terrorist from boarding a commercial aircraft. I spent 3 months listening to phone intercepts in real time to gather evidence needed to dismantle a violent drug gang. I recruited a source to provide critical intelligence on Russian military activities in Africa. I rescued a citizen being tortured to near death by members of an outlaw motorcycle gang. I interceded and stopped a juvenile planning to conduct a school shooting. I spent multiple years monitoring the activities of deep cover foreign intelligence officers, leading to their arrest and deportation. I endured extensive hardship to infiltrate a global child trafficking organization. I have been shot in the line of duty. Something else about me? I was assigned to investigate a potential crime. Like all previous cases I have investigated, this one met every legal standard of predication and procedure. I'm now sitting in my home listening to my children play and laugh in the backyard, oblivious to the prospect that their father may be fired in a few days. Fired for conducting a legally authorized investigation. Fired for doing the job that he was hired to do. I have to wonder, when I'm gone, who will do the quiet work that is behind the facade of your average neighbor. That's where we start today. With me at the table, NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, and former federal prosecutor and former lawyer with the DOJ National Security Division, Brendan Ballou, is back. Tom Winter, I imagine as someone who understands and has reported on the FBI for a long time that this rings true to you.
I mean, definitely. I can hear, I don't know who this individual was. I didn't get the email, but I mean, I can imagine a whole bunch of people that I've met over the years that are special agent men and women that could fit this exact same bill. It's a very weird time for the FBI, just generally, let alone the January 6th threat, which I'll get to. The first one being, it's kind of the best of times and the worst of times. If you look at some of the priorities that the administration is shifting to, and you're an agent and you're thinking about transnational crime, you're thinking about drug cartels and the tools that they'll now be able to use to go after them, areas that have really frustrated you for decades, and certainly the last decade, you're thinking, wow, we can really perhaps put some points on the board and do some damage. There also is going to be a changeover at the Bureau, some things that the FBI do need to change. If Chris Wray was sitting here next to me, he would be the first to say it. That's point one. On the other hand, there was certainly work being done at the FBI last week. 2 top 10 most wanted list arrests. There were a number of cases that they brought and were culminating and working on. But now you're thinking approximately 4,000 agents, maybe up to just shy of 5,000 agents that have had their hands on this in some way or the other. And it's not the people that replied to my posts on this story on Twitter saying, well, if it was 5,000 agents, then they must not have been too busy the past couple of years. No, it's not that. It's just somebody who gets a phone call and says, hey, can you go interview Nicole? She might have some information about somebody who was at the riot on January 6th. Hey, can you go, Nicole, you're on the SWAT team, and today we're going after a drug dealer. Yesterday was a terrorist. Today was somebody who sprayed bear spray in a cop's face on January 6th. That's your job. You're taking that as a court-authorized search warrant, a court-authorized arrest warrant. You're going out there and doing your thing. And people were really concerned towards the end of last week. It's abated a little bit, not a whole heck of a lot. Both current and former agents who may be in other law enforcement capacities, who may have their clearances, who may have jobs that still help this country's security, now thinking, what's next? I'm walking around with a baby grand piano over my head. Am I going to lose that clearance? Or if I'm active FBI, where am I going to go to? And one of the things that the FBI has specific skills. And sure, they could be hired by their local police department, but they're not going to be hired at the sergeant, lieutenant, captain level. They're going to have to start their careers all over again. That's a lot for families. And they already give up a lot. There's not OT per se in the FBI. They spend a lot of time away from their families. If you're on a surveillance squad, it's 24/7, not 24/7 surveillance. You're not on it 24/7, but it's a lot of time away. You've devoted a lot of that to your mission because you believe in it. It's not a security guard job, not to knock that, but it's not that type of a job. You have to be going out there and trying to make cases. And so I think when you look at it, for them, there's an awful lot for them to be concerned about. And the longer this kind of hangs over their heads, I think that there's really some consternation. And of course, it does naturally draw away attention. If my job was on the line sitting here today with you, I might not be fully focused on what I'm about to say because you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about your livelihood. So those are all things that are in play. The other thing that's at play is, and there's a saying, IRS CI teams say it, FBI agents say it, big cases, when it comes to publicity, big problems. And so we've seen in the case of Joe Ziegler, he was one of the whistleblowers in the IRS case. He was the one who opened the investigation into Hunter Biden. His whole life has been changed because of all the attention that that case brought and the eventual guilty plea that came out of it. If you're a federal agent, think about all the cases involving members of Trump's circle over the years. Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, Mike Flynn, everything we've been talking about for the last 8 years. What is the incentive to go out and open that case? To go to your supervisor and say, hey, I found out so-and-so might be up to something that's no good. And I'm not saying there's anybody that's under active criminal investigation. Hopefully there's nobody that should have been under active criminal investigation that wasn't ultimately charged here in this whole administration. But we know the way that people are. And every administration, particularly the last several, has had some sort of an issue swirling around it. Whether people agree with it or don't, whether they think it should be looked into or not, it doesn't matter. There's been issues around all of these administrations, certainly in the first Trump administration. So when you look at this, what is the incentive for that FBI agent to open that case into a member of Trump's inner circle? I can't think of one because it sounds like you're potentially asking for an automatic pink slip.
Well, I'm trying to listen for what you are and are not saying. And surely you're not arguing that the last 4 years were akin to the previous 4 years. I mean, the previous 4 years, the first Trump administration, Trump started by asking Jim Comey to see to it to let Mike Flynn go, who pleaded guilty twice in open court.
No doubt.
So the FBI's also the last president never maligned the FBI once. So again, I just want to be really honest with our audience. This is not a bureau that had the same experience the last 4 years as the previous 4.
No, that's not the equivalent. But the equivalent is when you're in these cases that are big publicity cases, headquarters becomes involved, different procedures become involved, and all of a sudden, if you're, I'm trying to put you in the shoes of the agent who's opening the case.
I want to know what it's like
these cases
to be
in a Biden administration. What do you think now, given the last 2 weeks?
I get that, but there's never been an agent in the FBI's history who's gone to work for the author of a book with an enemies list, with the last Republican-appointed Attorney General on it, Bill Barr. What is that like?
Yeah, and I think that's the situation where you're coming into and you're saying, is it the guy who said the things he said in front of the Senate trying to testify for his job? Or is it the guy that wrote the book, to your point, in the things he said in the enemies list and things like that? And so I think that you look at that and you say, well, that's the book that the person wrote. Where does their real heart lie?
It's not like a college essay, though. I mean, it's a book he wrote last year.
Yeah, I don't think I need to spell it out for anybody. I mean, that's clearly like, this is what this guy's thoughts are. This is what he believes in.
I mean, if they're asked to investigate Brendan, who prosecuted January 6 cases, what will they do?
I think that's really where the rubber is going to meet the road. And I think that's something that we'll have to watch over the coming couple of years. And I think there's a feeling among the older guard of the FBI, which is if those types of things are coming forward, that's where an agent, that letter that you read when you started the show, that person who plays golf with their neighbor, who goes to school choir practices or goes to school soccer games that you know, that's when that agent now has to make a determination do I quit my job on principle? And that's going to be a really tough place for them to be because of how it impacts their livelihood. That's what we've been reporting on. And that's a situation I think, you know, a lot of them are going to say, I might have to resign. And that's a tough spot to put somebody in that space. It's brutal.
It is a consequence of the election. Elections have consequences. But prosecuting you is something Trump has talked about on the campaign trail. It's something Pam Bondi refused to rule out in her confirmation hearings. It's something, as I think Tom is insinuating, Kash Patel was to be the most generous, opaque on. But tell me what the nightmare scenario is for you.
Well, the nightmare scenario, I suppose, for me personally, or for any of the prosecutors that were involved in January 6th, would be political prosecutions against us. But I think that this president would really like the narrative to be him versus the prosecutors. I don't think anybody's better equipped to handle the stresses of the legal system than lawyers and prosecutors in particular. The folks that I really worry about are the agents that you're just talking about. You know, identifying 5,000 agents that were involved in the January 6th investigations and potentially revealing those names to the public. This goes part and parcel with the pardons of the rioters from a few weeks ago. You know, the purpose of those pardons was to empower vigilantes and militias that were loyal to the president, but ultimately unaccountable to the government. And if these names are released, that gives those vigilantes, those militias, a target.